We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. And people did wish Tom a happy birthday belatedly, mostly on YouTube, honestly. I don't think you saw all the YouTube comments on that
I didn't.
video.
I'm going to have to go look at it. I was going to complain again.
That's where all the birthday wishes were.
Oh, well, I'll go to YouTube and
That's
thank
right.
you all. I won't actually thank you. I'll thank you all right here. Thank you, whoever you are. I got myself a lot of stuff for my birthday.
Nice.
My wife is not happy about because the bike was expensive. But we also got a new camera. So
Tom has a new camera.
If there's a problem, this is a completely different USB port.
Yep.
It's everything's different. It's
Tom's
a new camera
up to
plugged
date.
into a new
It's
port.
USB-C. He's got the blurred background effect going on that you can't really tell because it's a white background, but it means that his headphone cable is all blurred out.
I'd turn it off if I could figure out how I turned it on.
Don't mess with settings right now. Good
I'm
Lord.
not going to mess with you. I'm probably going to mess with you.
Yeah, you're
But
probably
I'll
gonna
try
mess
not
with
to do
settings.
it. Let's be honest. I touched the buttons. I will be taking a quick break here in a second just to go get some coffee. I have some coffee steeping
Yeah, right.
now. So
We had no idea when this podcast would happen. Couldn't possibly prepare it beforehand.
hey, you don't know all the stuff that's going on in my
I
life right
don't.
now.
That's true.
You have
That's
no
true.
idea how much of a hassle it was for me to get here at 10:30 at all, much less 10 o'clock. I knew when this was coming, and I had my wife on the phone. She rode her bike to work, and she's like, I dropped my mask. I'm like, do you have another one? Yeah, but can you go look for it? I'm like, you want me to drive all the way up and down where
Right.
you... She's like, yeah. I'm like, I really like that mask. I'm like, well...
All right.
So,
I didn't.
and I had other stuff too. I have kid stuff,
Oh, I
you don't
know.
understand that.
I didn't
you don't
put
understand
it
the kid stuff.
in the news, but did you see any of the DC fandom or
I actually
MCU
did. I actually was
announcement
watching
stuff?
it this morning while I was setting up. I saw the little bit of the Flash one. I did not see the Shazam one. I saw the new Batman trailer, and there was something else I watched. I don't remember what it was. I don't know. But I am not a Marvel fan.
Okay.
In particular. I mean, if you ask me my favorite comics, none of them come from Marvel.
Okay.
In fact, none of my favorite comics come from DC either.
Oh,
I tended to like the more independent
More
comics
indie
when I
comic
was
guy. All right.
indie comics. So, for you super comic nerds out there, my favorite comic book writer / artist is Matt Wagner.
Okay.
And if you know who that is, then good for you. And if you don't, then you go look him up. He's done some good stuff. I don't know if he's done anything recently, to be honest with you, because I haven't read comics in 20, 30 years. But I really want to be excited about DC. I mean, I've got no particular love for Marvel over DC or the other way around. I just like good movies, and Marvel has made them. Even though I get halfway, 2/3 of the way through every single Marvel movie and go, yeah, this is just the same movie again, isn't it? Isn't this the same movie? We're just watching the same movie over and over again, aren't we?
There are some pretty darn similar themes and plot points
Yeah,
in most,
it's like,
not
okay,
all, but most Marvel movies.
You got the hero who gets his powers, and then you get the bad guy who's almost got the same powers, but just a little bit more, and then they have to fight each other,
Like
and the good guy wins.
two sides of the same coin. Yes.
Is that like Iron Man, Black Panther, I mean... the Incredible Hulk, the one that I think they just they're just trying to get back into the thing. I mean, it's kind of a theme, but anywho, I would love for these DC movies to be good. I think that now that Zack Snyder is no longer in it, I think they are.
Here come the hateful comments.
I don't. Hey, I think Zack Snyder's. I mean, I've said it before. I think he's a great director. I think he's great. I think he was the wrong person to do the DC thing, and I think it's not his fault. And I've said that before too. I think that they all went, okay, Marvel's going bright and colorful. The Dark Knight trilogy did super well, and it was dark and edgy. Let's stick with dark and edgy. Who does dark and edgy well? Zack Snyder. Zack Snyder comes in, does exactly what they asked him to do, and they're like, it's not making any money. It's like, yes, because nobody wants to watch dark, edgy Superman. They like dark, edgy Batman, but not so much with the Superman.
They are definitely sticking with a dark, edgy Batman. That is most definitely what they're going for with the Batman.
That trailer looked okay.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't look too murdery, I guess. Maybe like that was the problem I had with the last Batman.
Very beat 'em up-y, not necessarily murdery to the edge of murdery.
Yeah, there's a fine line between killing somebody and beating them into a coma, I guess.
There you go.
It's an important part of his character, I think. But and I'm excited to see Robert Patterson do it. I think that but whatever his name is, Pattinson? Did I say wrong?
You said Pattinson.
His name is Pattinson?
Yeah, Pattinson.
I don't actually read people's names.
Actually, I might be wrong about that. Maybe I put an extra N in there too. I don't know. I'm not going to look it up right now.
All I know is that everybody who was associated with Twilight that got hate for being a part of Twilight deserves a second chance, as far as I'm concerned. And I'm excited to see him in this.
All right. Well, outside of DC, pretty much all the MCU movies got all pushed back one slot. So
yeah, I saw that.
Yeah,
too.
Whatever was going to come out in March of 2022, that got pushed back to the June.
Everybody saw what Scarlett Johansson got, and they're like, "All right, time to renegotiate."
Everything got shifted back a little bit there, and then originally on Disney Plus, The Marvels was like way back when they first announced it was going to come out at the end of this year, but now that's coming out at the beginning of next year. So everything just got shifted back about 3 months. That was pretty much.
I'm excited about Hawkeye.
Yeah. That's definitely coming out Christmas. If that doesn't come out Christmas time, it's not going to fit. That is a Christmas show.
I'm excited about that. I'm excited. I just finished What If, which I thought was very good as well. A little darker than I expected it to be.
I mean, the What If comics are super dark most of the time.
I know. I just didn't. I mean, I expected them not to go that direction, but they totally did. I'm watching it with my 12, 13, however old he is. I don't know how old he is. My youngest son, and there's zombies everywhere, and people are dying left and right, and Doctor Strange goes all Call of Cthulhu on everyone. Yep. I'm like, this is not what I was expecting to watch with my son, but that was fine. All right, this is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You can also find us at avrant.com, facebook.com/avrant podcast, youtube.com/avrant. If you want to watch our recording sessions.
Yep.
Bad lip sync. I don't know. Maybe the lip sync will be better now. I got a new camera.
The lip sync hasn't been too terrible. I mean,
all will be right with the world, Rob. That's what everybody tells me. You get a new camera, Tom, and everything will be fixed.
I've put in the minimum amount of effort to try and get the lip sync to not be too far off. So we'll see how that goes.
I highly encourage you to put the minimal amount of effort in to get
that is all you'll get as far as the video goes. That is for darn sure.
That's right. All right. You can contact Rob directly. Rob at avrant.com. His Twitter's at FirstReflect. I'm Tom at avrant.com. My Twitter is at avrant_Tom. Thank our listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, to support the podcast in some way, one of the ways you can do that is going to avrant.com. Click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link on the right side there, and it'll take you to a PayPal donation site. So we want to thank Sam for doing that this week. Thank you very much, Sam.
Yes, indeed. Sam, thank you very much for the PayPal donation. Appreciate that.
I'm going to log into PayPal again and see. For some reason that doesn't seem right. That doesn't seem like the right name. So
it was definitely Sam. I don't know if there was anyone else.
Yeah, there it is. I see it there. No, there's nobody else.
Okay,
but there's Sam. Okay, I'm just making sure. I was feeling unconfident there. So we also want to thank our 130 patrons over at patreon.com. Patreon is a service where you sign up to be a contributing, ongoing, monthly supporter of our podcast. Mm-hmm. Every month, they'll take some money from you and give most of it to us. We have 130 patrons currently over at patreon.com. Thank you very much to all of you.
Yeah, patreon.com/AVRant podcast. If you'd like to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation, it was up to $135 at one point, and it's just drained off because we missed a week or something. Maybe since we had 2 episodes, and by the way, we should thank Leo Overstreet as part of our listeners of the week because he came in and did a second episode with me so that we're all caught up for the most part on questions. So a thanks to him as well, and a thanks to our 130 patrons at patreon.com.
I don't speak to Lee during this time of year.
Right.
Lee and I do not speak to Lee during this time of year. This is college football season.
Right.
And I hate Lee during this season. Like, I mostly like Lee, but I literally cannot stand Lee during football season because it's just roll tide throughout my entire Facebook feed.
Ah,
and
yes.
There's a special circle of hell that he will have to, or purgatory maybe, that he will have to suffer through for all the things that he's posted to people's Facebook pages. So, Lee, you have that coming, and it's your own fault. It's a hell of your own making.
But thanks for recording with me last week.
Yes, I guess.
Uh-huh.
I also want to thank. I want to thank Ash personally. Ash, he does the art for our podcast, and he helped me out with something this week. You'll find out more about that coming up soon. So Ash helped me out this week. So Ash is a listener of the week. Thank you very much, Ash.
Thank you, Ash.
And we want to thank, we got some notes of gratitude for keeping this podcast going during the pandemic. So we got those from Jesper. He's from Denmark. Says our podcast is what sparked his interest in home theater 2 years ago, and he's listened all the way back to episode 450. Jesper, that's an interesting name.
Denmark. I wonder if it's Jesper.
Could be.
He said it was
it could
like
be.
a character from a show, and then I've completely forgot what he said, and I never watched that show, so I don't remember. So it has been said out loud somewhere.
It's a Danish show. You're like, well, that's not really
No, it was like
it's dark.
It was like
Dark's the only
an animated
European
show or something that that is
okay.
definitely worldwide and popular, but I didn't recall it. I'm sorry.
My kids are watching One Piece right now. I'm like, I just can't stand it. It's the worst. It's just the worst. Sam, who says thanks for all our advice and directions. He's purchased many items based on what we've said, and they've worked out well. Gurinder. John, who says our show has been a godsend of helpful info. Noah. Jack. And another Jack. And he says, the second Jack says he can't wait until we get to episode 1000. We have to throw a big party. I have a feeling we're both going to squeak up to it and go, "Oh man, dude, we're going to be 1,000 this week."
Yup.
That's exactly what the reaction is going to be. In case you're wondering,
Actually, since you're in contact with Ash, you should be like, 800 isn't that far away. We're going to need another graphic, so
I think we should.
half a year.
I think we should redo the whole thing. I think it should be a complete redesign for the 1,000.
I'd be down for that. Yep.
Yeah.
So
you've got like 2/3 of it. No, it's 200 episodes. You've got 4 years to figure it out.
That's right. I will repeat the names.
Get to work, Ash.
I think it might be Jesper. I'm thinking in Denmark a J would be a Y, but I'm not sure. I'm sorry. Jesper, however you pronounce your name. Probably both of those are wrong. But thank you for the note of gratitude, Sam, Gurinder, John, Noah, Jack C, and Jack R. Thank all of you as well. Really do appreciate those notes of encouragement. And a big thank you to everybody who continues to listen. So that is very nice.
All right, in the news, we have Vizio announced their 2022 lineup of TVs. 2022 model numbers all end with a J. 2021 model numbers end with an H, in case you're keeping score.
That's right.
And they've simplified their lineup a bit, which would not be hard to do because they have the most complicated lineup of just about anybody.
They did have a pretty complicated lineup. Yep.
So the P Quantum X series is now a single 85-inch model. It gets 792 zones of local dimming and a claimed peak brightness of 3,000 nits. The 65 and 75-inch models are now the regular P series. They get up to 210 zones and claim 1,200 nits. How much is that big one? Is it a little expensive?
We don't know the prices yet. They haven't announced the prices yet.
The P Series and P Quantum X are the only models with HDMI 2.1 inputs, offering 4K 120 Hz and VRR support. That means gamers will definitely be looking more at Hisense and TCL for high-end gaming features at the lower or the lowest price points. There are two versions of the M series with screen sizes from 43 to 75. The MQ7 series gets 32 zones of local dimming. The lower end MQ6 series says it still has local dimming, but appears to just have 4 zones.
Yeah,
so
that's all I could find reference to. It's basically a backlight. That's what that really is.
So we don't really know the prices or the launch date yet, but coming soon. Christmas, I would guess.
Yeah, they do intend to have the 2022 series out before 2022, the actual year, happens, because that's what they're doing. They're doing almost like the car launches, where the model year is always a little bit ahead there.
We all just have to get used to production delays for the next probably half a decade at least, maybe a little bit more. I've got a friend who's redoing his kitchen, and he told me today the only person that would give him a quote on not a price quote, just a delivery quote, was like 18 months.
Fun
for appliances for his kitchen. I'm like, I know. I mean, we were having the same problems when we were getting the dishwasher. It took us like 3 months just to get a dishwasher, and it's like their most popular model. His wife wants white appliances, and he's like, I can get stainless. This white's going to take me forever. I'm like,
so it seems like feature-wise, what Vizio went for is they want to have, so they've got every flavor of HDR. So they've got both Dolby Vision and HDR10 Plus, in addition to HLG and HDR10. And then it seems like they wanted to have every possible voice assistant, including their own. They have one called Vizio Voice, which when you already have, Amazon's and Google's and, well, Apple's isn't built in, but it'll still work with Apple's voice assistant if you have an external device to talk to. I'm like, why you needed your own Vizio Voice, I'm not sure. But not only that, they decided that, you know how all the remotes these days have dedicated buttons for like Netflix and Disney Plus and stuff? They're like, well, everyone else has 4 or maybe 6. Well, they've got 7. That's where they're going to outdo everybody. They've got 7 dedicated buttons on their new remote now for those services. So, those are the upgrades we were all asking for. But there you go. Vizio.
I don't mind having a button for the different services that are out there. I mean, I think it makes programming your universal remote infinitely easier, especially considering the fact that we might all be relegated to having like those handheld ones where you have to point the remotes at each other and to learn the codes and everything. So I don't think it's a terrible thing. Carl says Europe's first THX Ultimate Cinema has opened in Copenhagen. Denmark. It seats nearly 1,000 people with 1,500 square foot screen. Yeah.
It's bigger than my apartment, dude.
seems large. Twin Barco laser projectors deliver 4K resolution, and there's an immersive audio Atmos system, of course. Movies are specifically remastered for THX Ultimate Cinemas. The only other THX Ultimate Cinema is the Regency Westwood Village in Los Angeles. I think I've been to that theater. I mean, it wasn't THX Ultimate back then, but I think I've been there, and it was a pain to get into. I mean, as far as parking and stuff. So
right.
I don't think, didn't like it.
So that's fun. There's 2 THX Ultimate cinemas in the world. They are remastering the content specifically for those theaters when they show something. So, fun experience if you live either in Los Angeles or in Copenhagen.
There you go. Apple's third-gen AirPods will bring spatial audio to the lowest price point yet. It's $179, available October 26th. You previously needed either the $250 AirPods Pros or the $550 AirPods Max in order to get spatial audio. I done something about the way that they spell spatial. It just looks like spatulal, and it just drives me nuts. I misspell it constantly when I'm writing about it. I always put a C instead of a T, because it just should be spatial, not spatial. Whatever.
Well, these are the normal AirPods now. So the third generation of the normal AirPods will support spatial audio from your iOS device or from your Apple TV 4K.
I understand why they don't have support for all sorts of other headphones, because clearly you need the gyroscopes or whatever in there in order to make that happen. But it's super dumb. like they should have partnered with other people and said, okay, we're going to be bringing this new thing. When we're going to release it on this date, this is what your headphones need to do in order to do it. Make some, and you can announce alongside us. But instead they're just like, nah, we're just going to make our own headphones, and if you don't buy ours, it doesn't work for you. And that's so very Apple, but I hate it. I hate it just infinitely much a ton. So there's a rumor that LG might release a 97-inch OLED model next year. So that'd be the biggest one yet. LG Display has announced a 97-inch OLED panel production. So just a question of whether they'll decide to offer a consumer model. Apparently the ultra-large size TV market is seeing faster growth than other sizes. Yeah, I mean, it's a weird thing, man. It's a weird thing. We finally get to the point where flat panels are being able to compete size-wise with what most people think of as a large screen, or too large of screen. I mean, people are like, oh my God, how can you put a 65-inch TV in your house? I'm like, how can you put something smaller than 65 inches?
Right.
Like, I can't sit close enough to a 65-inch TV. But we're finally getting there, man. And the fact that your projector's just aren't ever going to get as bright as they need to get for really good HDR. It's projectors are on the way out, man.
Yeah,
I think
so
they're going to last.
It is expected that this would be an 8K resolution model. So at present, the largest OLED that is available is an 88-inch 8K, and those are still up at $30,000, I believe. So 97 8K is going to be more than that, one would expect. I'm thinking it might be closer to $60,000 or something along those lines, but people are buying them. The 77-inch and the 88-inch 8Ks are selling even at their $20,000 and $30,000 price points. Not to me, not to a lot of people, but somebody out there is buying them up. So they're like, hey, now we can physically make a 97-inch because it's
I don't know how you get the thing in the door. You know what I mean?
Oh, I know.
I think you have to have like a sliding, like a double, like a French door or something, and lean it to the side.
Yeah, that's not a modular display. That's just one big piece of glass coming on in.
I just don't know. I mean, like, oh my, where's your home theater? Oh, upstairs in the bonus room. I'm like, well, you're not getting that screen up there. Knock out a window, maybe.
We'll see if it actually happens.
We'll see. Some comments here. Nathan, he says, we do mention it all the time, but it can never be said enough. Run conduit for your in-wall and in-ceiling cables, especially if you are renovating the room anyway. There's no such thing as future-proof HDMI cable. Install that conduit, he says. All right. Thanks, Nathan. And this is inspired by a comment on our YouTube channel. Matt wanted to know what method would work for securing velvet or other fabric to his ceiling. He has used carpet tape in the past and it held the fabric up just fine, but over time the fabric sagged a bit and didn't look good anymore. So one option is a fabric tack system such as FabricMate.
Fabric track. Yeah. Not tack. Track system.
What did I say?
You said tack.
Fabric. I thought
it's a track system.
All right. I clicked on something. Plastic tacks can be stapled or glued. Tracks. Why do I keep saying tacks?
I don't know. Usually you add extra letters. Now you're removing one. It's so
I'm
weird.
removing them. This word does not need an R. Plastic tracks can be stapled or glued to your wall or ceiling. You can choose from different depths, as shallow as 1/4 inch all the way as deep as 4 inches. You can fill that depth with FabricMate's own Recore substrate or any rigid insulation so that the system doubles as an acoustic treatment. Your choice of fabric is stretched over the plastic tracks and gripped in place. I'm clicking on this thing.
Yeah. So it is a plastic track system that you staple to the wall or ceiling as shallow as 1/4 inch, so it doesn't have to take up very much space at all. And then you sort of use just like a blade or even like a pizza roller type of device to just wedge the fabric into the little groove.
Oh, I see.
That's all.
I was trying to figure out.
It just holds it there. So it stretches the fabric taut as long as you're like rolling it in there with or pushing it in there with the sort of spatula knife type thingy.
I guess you're always going to have to worry about it starting to sag over time, though. But this will give you the ability to tack it back up a little bit more,
to tighten it if you want to, or to change the fabric entirely if you want. It's not a destructive system. So it's not super cheap. It's like for every 5-foot piece of track, it's like $7. So that adds up real quick. But you don't have to space things out, super close together. You can put a decent amount of space in between there if you're using regular insulation. If you're using the deeper ones and having it double as an acoustic panel, you're probably going to end up with, at most 2 foot wide. So if you're having these tracks every 2 feet on your wall or ceiling, that the price can add up pretty quick. But in terms of giving you a clean look, straight lines, a stable way of attaching the fabric to your walls, it's certainly worth looking into. FabricMate is not the only option for this track system, but they've got sort of the largest variety of depths available. That's one of the reasons why I mentioned that company in particular.
I don't know about this. The picture of the owner guy who started it in his garage with a tank top on and sweats. I don't know that. That is the look I would be going for. All right, let's get to our questions here. Blake just completed a 30 by 40 foot deck in his backyard. He'd like to add some outdoor speakers to the side of his house to play music back there. He already has a pair of Polk Atrium 5 outdoor speakers mounted under the eaves of the side of his house. He also has a pair of big MTX speakers in his garage. He's been powering both of those with an old Kenwood VR205 receiver rated at 50 watts per channel. He can wire the 2 pairs of speakers as front A and front B, and that way he can easily select to have either play or both pairs at the same time. He has plugged a long-range Bluetooth receiver into his Kenwood and sends music to it from his phone, and it all works well. And it can play loud enough for the purposes. He's thinking he'd like to change as little as possible and spend as little as possible. How many speakers do we think he needs in order to have good coverage for the large 30 by 40 foot deck in the back with the speakers mounted to the side of the house? And if we think he should have more than one pair, how should you run them? Keep one stereo signal running to the back patio and wire multiple left-right speakers together and multiple left speakers together and multiple right speakers together. Maybe just run all speakers in mono. What do we think? So without a picture, I know you have a deck, but does it have a pergola over the top or some sort of framing?
It sounds like it's just an open
sounds like it's a
deck
deck
at the back of the house. That's what it sounds like.
I mean, no one ever tells us what they're planning on doing. Like when I have outdoor backyard speakers, my thought process is always ambient music while I'm doing yard work or having guests over or something like that. But there's always a chance what he's looking for is a rave.
I mean, it doesn't seem like it because he described his other uses for the ones that he already has.
Right.
And he's like, he doesn't typically crank it. It's, it's just music, nice, pleasant music playing in these outdoor settings and in his garage settings. So assuming that's the same case.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I usually go for the Yamaha speakers that we always talk about on here as outdoor
the
ones.
sort of wedge-shaped ones aren't really available anymore. So they're down to their sort of regular-shaped ones, which is still a perfectly decent choice. But yeah, they don't have the ones that we used to like a lot more. But before we get to the actual what ones do we recommend, because that's the next question, he was saying, do we think he needs more than a pair? Would he need 2 or 3 pairs of speakers to cover this area? Now,
I don't think so.
From what he described of this sort of open deck, whatever speakers he has are going to be mounted to the side of the house. So they're all coming from the same direction. So at that point, like the way I would put it is, as long as the speakers, one pair of speakers has enough output capability, it's not as though adding another pair of speakers to the side of the house, the same side of the house, and firing them all in the same direction is somehow going to magically cover more area than just one pair.
I guess that's what I'm confused about. Because I'm like, if you've already got speakers back here, why are we looking for more speakers?
Well, he doesn't. He's got speakers on the side of his house. This is the back of his house. This is a different face of his house. But it sounds as though the speakers are all attached to the house. So as long as I think one pair of speakers is all you need, I wouldn't run all the speakers in mono. You've got a left and right from your source, so I would run them as a stereo pair. It's not gonna end up sounding like a whole lot of stereo separation, I don't think, in a big space like this. But you're talking about 1,200 square feet, right? 30 by 40. That's the area of the deck. So yeah, I think as long as the speakers you get have sufficient output capability, then one pair of speakers and just connecting them as stereo speakers is going to work just fine. So Tom already mentioned we did recommend Yamaha all the time because his next question was what speakers would we recommend. The ones we really like, though, I'm not able to find those for sale anymore. Over at AV Gadgets, Tom does have an article about some of the best outdoor speakers that are available, but I also headed over to the Wirecutter because they're a great resource for things like this. And one that they're recommending that is available at a pretty reasonable price right now is from Outdoor Speaker Depot. And it is their, let's see, which ones in particular, because the model number doesn't show up right in the URL there. It is the AP650. That is just a 6.5-inch woofer, but these have pretty darn high efficiency. It's like 93 dB per watt efficiency. And right in the article, in the Wirecutter article about them, they were like, yeah, these are good for covering an area upwards of about 1,500 square feet, and you're in the 1,200 square foot area. They were like, they can play surprisingly well, have good frequency response. The price is about $200 for the pair. And what I like in particular is they are a sealed design. I do not know why there are any outdoor speakers that have ports in them. I don't think that makes a lick of sense. So these ones are a sealed design, and I think that's a good choice there. So, okay, Tom is sitting back down. I'm not sure where Tom went that whole time, but
that was coffee.
I was just getting coffee. Walked away right in the middle of a recommendation.
Whatever. You were talking.
All right.
Yeah, I already said what my recommendation
okay.
was. I mean, you can run them in parallel if you want both of them all at the same time.
Right.
Or
So I've covered that. We can go on to part C.
Can you keep using his Kenwood to power everything? Yes. His existing 2 pairs of speakers plus the new additional speakers for the back patio. He was thinking he could use a speaker selector switch. He could easily do that. I actually think that's not a bad idea, simply because I'll be honest with you, I'm always confused about how they handle A, B together. I kind of feel like they're not. I don't know how that works when you play both of them at the same time within the receiver.
Because
I've never
usually
really done it.
It like commandeers the surround backs or the surrounds if it's only a 5.1. It usually like commandeers that, because the Kenwood he mentioned, I looked at the back and it doesn't have like a dedicated speaker B and speaker A. It just commandeers the rear pair, so you can't run surround sound.
That would be fine. That would be fine then. Yeah.
So that's already
fine.
fine.
Speaker selector switch would be just convenient, I guess.
Yeah, well, and I mean, he actually pointed to one, Monoprice's speaker selector switch. And now this thing, because a lot of speaker selector switches, they'll kind of do a series of series parallel combinations to make sure that the impedance stays where it needs to be. But this one seems to be simpler than that. It's got 4 pairs of binding posts, or not binding posts, but spring clips. It's got 4 pairs of spring clips to connect 4 pairs of speakers, and then just spring clips for your left and right inputs coming from your source. So that's fine. It'll feed out of, 1 pair of binding posts from your Kenwood will be the source for this speaker selector switch, and then you could have as many as 4 pairs of speakers connected. He really only needs 3, the pair on the side of his house, the pair in his garage, and this new pair in the back. If you do end up deciding that you want to install another pair of speakers in the backyard around the patio, maybe you get some rock speakers and put them at the 4 corners of the patio so that you have more coverage that way. Well, you can still physically connect 4 pairs of speakers to this Monoprice, but there is one more toggle switch, and boy, oh boy, even though I think it's pretty self-explanatory with what it says right on the front of the switch itself, people sure got confused by this because there's a thing called the single pair direct. And it says right on the front of this box, engage when using 1 pair of loudspeakers. So if you're using 2, 3, or 4 pairs, you disengage the switch and you engage the switch when you're using only 1 pair of speakers. Now, what confused people to no end when I was reading the 1-star reviews of people who were saying they had a problem with this thing, is that when you disengage that switch, it removes a protective resistor in the signal chain. And when you engage the switch, I just got confused, but I'll get it right because it's not that bad. When you engage the switch, it removes the resistor from the signal chain. When you disengage the switch, when you're intending to use 2, 3, or 4 pairs of speakers, it puts the protective resistor into the signal chain so that even if you're using 4 pairs of 8-ohm speakers, because all this thing is really doing is parallel, that's all this is really doing, is playing all the speakers in parallel. It's not doing, an intelligent switching between series parallel wiring. It's just putting it all in parallel. So when they're all in parallel and playing up to 4 pairs of 8-ohm speakers, it just engages a protective resistor so that your receiver is never seeing less than a 5-ohm load. That is the minimum it will ever see, is a 5-ohm load. So that should be fine. He's got 50 watts per channel starting out, potentially driving 3 pairs of speakers all at once. There's a outside chance that you won't have enough wattage. That's not utterly impossible. What I would suggest, what my recommendation would be, is try this first. The speaker selector switch is inexpensive. I think that's well worth giving a try because it is the most convenient way to connect this. So get the pair of speakers, just the one to start. Get the speaker selector switch, hook it up to your Kenwood, and, try driving. Don't start with the volume cranked instantly. Start with it turned down a bit and try driving all 3 pairs of your speakers this way. And if you're like, you know what? I'm either starting to hear some distortion or I'm starting to turn the volume dial up and it's not getting any louder, then, you're running out of headroom. At that point, I can't really say get an external amplifier because your Kenwood doesn't have pre-outs. So a different 2-channel amp, something with a little bit more power, because that Kenwood was pretty old and pretty low power. But I would certainly say give it a try first, because I think it'll probably do the job.
Yeah, and if you don't like the Monoprice logo on the front, you can just search Amazon and you'll find about 7 different other brands that have the exact same design, the exact same buttons, and the exact same everything. This is exactly the same.
Yep.
I was looking for something a little bit cheaper, but there's really not that's I can find quickly while we're talking here. There's a 2-1 but it's just an either or. It doesn't allow you to play both, which I think is fine for most situations. Okay. Close that. Open this. If he uses the speaker selector switch, does he need to worry about series or parallel wiring? If he doesn't get the speaker selector switch, could he just continue using his front A and B setup along with some series parallel wiring to keep the impedance where it needs to be? So it's only if you can group your ones in the back with another pair, then you could use the AB and continue to do what you do, and then you just change the wiring, which would be fine. It's going to probably take some pretty long speaker wire runs to make it happen, but you were doing that anyway, so you just it's cheaper than doing anything else.
Yeah, like you're going to have 3 pairs of speakers, or you could think of it as like 3 zones.
Right.
And if you're just going to continue using what your Kenwood can do on its own without the speaker selector switch, at least 2 pairs of those speakers would always have to be playing together. So you could have it where the side of the house and the back of the house, they always play together, and then you could independently choose whether the garage speakers are playing or not, or whatever the combination is. But at least 2 pairs of those will have to be playing together all the time. He's saying right now the side of the house and the garage speakers don't always play together.
Right. And that's what I would assume. I would assume the side and the back of the house, you could wire those together.
Maybe.
Because if you can never envision a situation where you wouldn't want all 4 of those speakers playing at the same time, then you can wire them together and keep doing what you're doing. If not, then you get the switch.
Did that, I would wire them in series. For connecting them straight to the Kenwood, I don't think I would wire them in parallel.
Yeah. I would, if I were you, while you're going through all this and thinking about all this, I would just visit your local thrift stores, pawn shops, places like that, and just look for receivers that have more than 1 or 2, 2 or 3 zones. Get if you can find one, because you might. I don't know if you're going to find it for $20, which is what that Monoprice speaker selector switch is, but it would make your life infinitely easier if you had a 3-zone and you could power all 3 zones from your receiver, or even if you had 2 zones, but you also had the A and B and everything else.
Right. So, yeah. That's another way.
Yeah. Dazz. First up, Dazz just wanted to say that the Panasonic UB420 Ultra HD Blu-ray player was a great recommendation. He snagged a deal on the open box unit at Best Buy. Dazz recently got some blackout curtains. He didn't really need them for better light control or anything, but they were cheap, so he figured to give them a try. For one of his windows, he tends to put an acoustic panel in front of it since it's right at a first reflection point. It would be easiest to put the panel right in front of the window and then have a curtain come down over the panel, hiding it from view. The panel would take care of blocking the light from the window, so should he go back to his sheer black curtains over the acoustic panel? Would the blackout curtain hurt the acoustic performance of the panel? Well, I mean, if for what we really want the panel to do, which is, bass or but the lower stuff.
At a first reflection point, though, that's not 100% true anymore.
It's not going to make a huge amount of difference, but it will block the treble.
Yeah.
Just put your mouth up. I've got blackout curtains everywhere. Put your mouth up to the blackout curtain. It's going to, it's going to give you some resistance, which means those highest frequencies are going to reflect off of it. So now it's like you've almost created a diffusion panel, like
not
a combo
particularly
panel.
Great diffusion panel.
Not a great one, but you've created one. So yes, you should go back to the sheer. If the light is going to be blocked, or you put the panel in front of the blackout curtain.
Panel in front of the curtain. Yeah, it's within the room. The panel is visible, and the curtain is closest to the window at this point. Those would be the 2 options. Yeah. For a first reflection point, I wouldn't put a blackout curtain over the panel so that the curtain is closer to me than the panel is. That wouldn't be what I would choose for a first reflection point. You want the high frequencies absorbed too.
Yeah. And his in-ceiling Atmos speakers are RBH A615s. Audyssey automatically matched their levels to all the other speakers, and the result is that their trim is set to +3. Mm-hmm. Does that put any additional wear on his receiver's amplifiers? Would he benefit from upgrading to larger in-ceiling speakers? Absolutely. This is clearly I'm surprised your receiver hasn't caught on fire yet.
Geez,
to be honest with you, there's no world in which I don't understand why people are so focused on the trim levels in the receivers. All of a sudden, it just feels like that's all people want to talk about is trim level. Like the trim level on my receiver is a +7. Does that mean something? Yeah, it means that your speakers are far away and not very efficient. Other than that, no one cares. No one cares. And it's doing is level matching. That receiver has oodles of power. I think for overhead Atmos speakers, you're probably getting maybe one of those scenes in A Quiet Place when the things are walking overhead, 3 watts, maybe.
Sure, yeah.
6 watts. I don't think that it's going to make any difference, my man. And bigger doesn't necessarily mean more efficient either. I mean, what you're really saying is more efficient, and you certainly don't need that. You don't need any of that.
No. So I mean, first of all, if you are within the available trim range, plus or minus,
plus or minus 10 or 12
yeah.
is usually what it is.
And if you're within that, so I mean, the thing is, if you run your room correction or you run your auto setup and your AV receiver sets the trim level for any of your speakers or subwoofers to the very maximum, either plus or minus, then we don't really know at that point if it actually would have set it even further if it could have. We're not sure. Right. We just know it got to the maximum. But if you are, +3, you are definitely well within the range that is available. Then the notion that somehow something is going to break itself when it set itself to a completely available level that's within the settings, I'm not sure why you would be worried to begin with that you're, into danger territory. You most definitely are not. I will flatly say that it is perfectly fine to have a trim level set to +3. It's perfectly fine to have it set to +10. That's all within the user available settings, and nothing is going to break itself from being set there. But in terms of what is actually going on with those trim levels. So it's kind of funny because over at Audio Science Review, one of the things that Amir complains about and the rest of his, lemming-like followers end up complaining about too, because he said it.
Why don't we ever get lemming-like followers?
Oh, we've got a couple.
Do we really?
Yeah.
Why aren't you guys out there talking this up at Reddit and making everybody come over here?
I don't want that kind of support. Question everything we say. That's absolutely the way it should go. If
no one's ever going to be a lemming for me, I'm too abrasive. People are like, I could be a cult leader for an hour, and then I would say something, and they'd be like, "Oh, screw that guy," and they would all leave. That would be it. But that would be my cult.
Over there, he's talked about for one of the things is in their reviews of amplifiers and AV receivers, he only ever tests an analog input and then how the amplifier amplifies that, or a direct HDMI input just to test what comes straight out of the DAC, out of the pre-outs, not out of the speaker binding posts, in that instance. And he says he does that because as soon as you engage any form of bass management, digital bass management, as soon as you engage any form of room correction or anything like that, and he's right about this, but I don't see it as a problem, you quote unquote lose 10 or 12 decibels of headroom in the maximum signal because it basically reserves that for the +10 or the +12 setting that might be applied by the equalization system or by the trim level system, right? Any of your digital bass management, digital trim levels, digital equalization, it all reserves however much it might put in that plus section, right? So that's coming off of your theoretical maximum. He's like, and I just want to see what the theoretical maximums are. It's fine to want to see what the theoretical maximums are, but then to say that you're stealing 10 or 12 decibels of headroom. This is why we start with a 24-bit signal, right? A 24-bit signal that has a dynamic range of I'm forgetting how to work out the math, but like we don't need that much. We don't need the dynamic range to actually be that. If it were that high, you'd be making yourself deaf if it ever played to full scale. So that's the whole idea of having more bits to work with, is that you can reserve this 10 or 12 decibels of headroom above that. So if your trim level's set at 0, then it can go up to that plus 10 or that plus 12. You're not going beyond the capabilities electronically or amplifier wise. That headroom got reserved once you had the digital signal processing turned on in your AV receivers. So if you think of it that way, you are definitely not in danger, especially not at plus 3. And you're not putting additional strain on the amplifiers, because it's not going, I was already at maximum and now you pushed me 3 decibels further than I was prepared to go. No, it reserved the potential 10 or 12 decibels that were up there, and you're only using 3 of them.
I mean, this is level matching and getting the volume level right with a speaker, as long as it's like we talk about subwoofers all the time. Are you at maximum power? Mm-hmm. Are you at maximum ability of the speaker? You are, as long as you're within the operating range of the speaker, you're not going to break it. There is no breaking it. You have to push it past its limits. So the receiver is the same way. Plus 3, that is well within its operating capacity. You see a plus 10 or a minus 10, specifically.
If it makes you feel better, you could think of it, and this wouldn't be totally wrong, of maximum, like true maximum. This is as loud as the signal can possibly go to this AV receiver. And at the plus 3 setting, you're actually at like minus 9. Right? Because it reserved, I think it's 12 decibels that get reserved in the Denon.
I think it is. Too,
so at plus 3 in the trim level, you're actually at minus 9 of true full scale, because it reserved 12 decibels of headroom for that trim level setting, and then you used 3 out of the 12 decibels that got reserved. So if that helps you to feel better about it, then think of it as minus 9 full scale instead of plus 3 on the trim level.
I bet that's not going to make him feel any better, I'm being honest with you. Dazz, Mark, and Jim. These questions are all grouped together as some sort of smorgasbord of questions. So the last time Dazz used the Audyssey editor app was back in November 2020. Since then, iOS 15 has come out for his iPhone 11 Pro Max. Pro Max, come on. And now the Audyssey editor app crashes when he tries to use it. An update to a operating system broke a program? This has never happened before. Somebody called AP News and let them know that this has happened, because it's never happened before. He's done all the typical troubleshooting, looked for an app update, deleted the app and added it back in, rebooted his phone, blah, 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 no luck. Mark also experienced having the app crash on him after updating to iOS 5. He noted the multiple reviews on the App Store from other people reporting the same problem. Dazz did manage to get a successful run of the Audyssey app completed by using his son's iPad that hadn't been updated yet. But any ideas for getting it working on his iOS 15 phone? So I'm betting with I can see what Rob has written here, but even before that, we're just waiting for Audyssey to update their app. Is what we're doing.
And there was an app update. The day before we recorded this podcast, October 18th, there was a new update to the Audyssey editor app. It's now on version 1.7.1. Now, I didn't do an entire run of Audyssey because I didn't have time to do that, but I just quickly opened the app. It did not crash. I quickly started a new session. It did not crash, which is where it was crashing for everybody. As soon as you attempted to start a new session, it was crashing, and I don't doubt that for a second. Yes, there was the iOS 15 update not that long ago, and surprise, surprise, several apps out there, including the Audyssey editor app, had issues after that OS level update. So it seems as though, like I say, I didn't actually complete the run, so who knows? It might have crashed on me a bit later. But as far as where it was crashing for everybody initially, I got it to start with my Denon receivers. So it seems as though that very recent update to the Audyssey editor app has hopefully fixed that. Now, I did just want to mention, outside of that, we've had people before tell us how, they've gotten like almost to the very end of the Audyssey setup process using the Audyssey editor app, and then it not necessarily crashes, but maybe fails to send the data to their AV receiver, and it's very annoying because that means having to start over and go through the whole thing again. that almost always seems to be down to Wi-Fi issues. You see that all the time. Really important that, well, not really, it shouldn't be the case, but it seems to be the case anecdotally that, like, for example, almost every router these days, you'll have both a 2.4 gigahertz and a 5 gigahertz band, and make sure you're on the same band for both the AV receiver and your phone, because even though it shouldn't be a problem, the tiny bit of latency or translation or whatever goes on when one of them is on the 2.4 and the other one's on the 5, somehow that seems to create issues. A lot of people have Wi-Fi issues in general. If there's any little Wi-Fi hiccup, it seems to be very problematic for the app. Difficult on the phone side because there aren't you aren't hardwiring your phone to your network connection, but you do have the option of hardwiring the AV receiver, and for a lot of people, that's fixed it. But that wasn't what was going on here. The app itself was just crashing almost as soon as you opened it.
Yeah, so my receiver is hardwired, and I've had issues too, and it's almost always because I've decided to just put my phone in my back pocket and carry it around while this is going on.
Sometimes it's the reverse. Sometimes having the AV receiver hardwired when your phone is on Wi-Fi, that tiny little translation that has to happen inside the router apparently is enough to wig this thing out. So it seems as though the best thing you can do is have both the AV receiver and your phone on the exact same Wi-Fi band together. And that seems to, as long as your Wi-Fi signal is stable, seems to cause the fewest problems as far as that goes.
So Jim has a different Audyssey editor app problem. He linked to an AVS forum thread where he and a few others posted about it. There are mentions of the iOS 15 crashes in that thread too, but hopefully that is resolved now.
Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Jim's issue is specific to the Denon X3600H model. If he runs Audyssey from the app, from the 3600H itself, no app involved, it seems to function just fine, as confirmed by room EQ measurements afterward. But of course, you cannot make any changes to the default target curve or turn off the mid-range compensation if you run Audyssey from the receiver. So when he uses the Audyssey editor app, it definitely makes changes, again confirmed by measuring with Room EQ Wizard afterwards, but the reference curve results come out all messed up. If he switches to the flat setting in the receiver, that measures okay, including the mid-range compensation setting, but the app doesn't change the rest of the flat target curve, only the reference target curve. Comparing via Room EQ Wizard, the results of the reference setting when Audyssey was run directly from the AV receiver versus the reference setting when Audyssey was run from the app show big differences. The intended high-frequency roll-off is all messed up. I don't know what all messed up. Via the app, and the bass has lots of peaks and dips via the app. They aren't the same peaks and dips when Audyssey is off completely, and they're much worse than when Audyssey is run directly from the receiver. Furthermore, other people who have reported the same glitch have found that it seems to only happen if you are using overhead speakers. If you just have a standard 5.1 or 7.1 setup, things seem to be okay. But if you have an Atmos configuration, this glitch happens, and more than that, the overhead speakers don't seem to get any EQ applied to them at all. Again, using Room EQ Wizard to look at the after results. None of this seems to happen with other Denon receiver models. Somehow, it seems to be unique to the 3600H specifically. But when he's contacted Denon customer support, they've only ever replied they haven't been able to replicate the problem, and they just give the standard troubleshooting advice. So it's a long shot, but do we have any info or suggestions that might help? I didn't think that Audyssey did anything to the overhead speakers like full stop. I thought
it does. If it's not the Dolby enabled upward firing speakers,
right?
If it's
maybe that's what.
If it's physical height or top speakers.
Well, I mean, I figured they would. I didn't know that they EQ'd them at all, though. I thought the EQ was the Dolby EQ that they have.
No, that's for the upward firing ones. For the upward firing ones, it's the Dolby head related transfer function that's getting applied. But for actual, overhead, physically overhead or height speakers, it does EQ those. Okay. So, I mean, I don't have an X3600H. I've got Marantz SR6013 and a Denon X6700H. I certainly have not noticed this problem. I will admit I have not, Room EQ Wizard checked every single one afterward, but I mean, what he was showing in the graphs that he took, that was audible. That was big old peaks and dips in the bass response, and then the treble, in the reference target curve, there's a roll-off. That's part of the target in the high frequencies. There's a high frequency roll-off, and his actually went up, after the correction. Just running it in in the AV receiver itself, came out fine, came out looking very close to the reference target curve when he measured it with Room EQ Wizard. It did a good job. It got close to the original target curve. But when he wanted to make manual changes in the app, which is what the app is for, did not work correctly at all. The flat was okay, but you can't manually change the target curve of the flat. It's just aiming for a flat. You can turn the mid-range compensation on and off, though, in the app, and that was something he did. So he's like, okay, I don't want the mid-range compensation, and he'll stick with the flat. That was his solution. But this isn't the way it should be, clearly. He was like, am I just nuts? And then he found other people on AVS forum with the same problem, but it seemed to only be X3600H owners of other models from Denon and Marantz didn't have this problem. Now, I don't know. I don't have further info. I had no idea this was even a thing until you brought it to our attention. And if this is what's going on with one specific model, I have no idea what the problem is. Now that there's been a new update to the app itself, maybe give it one more try. Who knows if something was changed in the app itself that helped out.
I don't know that I'd be calling Denon for this anyways. I'd call Audyssey. Well, it seems like Audyssey would be the one that would be, I mean, out of, cramp.
Oh, jeez.
Okay, sorry.
Oh my God.
Hold on. Okay, all right, I got it in time. I straightened my leg. Audyssey would be the one I think that would actually go back and be able to replicate this a lot more easily than I think Denon would. Even though Denon has the hardware, I just think that Chris over at I assume he's still at Audyssey would be the kind of person who'd be like, oh, I got to figure this out. You know what I mean?
But I mean, you would think that if it's specific to just one model, that there must have been something hardware-wise, some chip or some piece of programming in the X3600H specific firmware or something. But then again...
But if it's hardware-wise, it would happen both, right? It seems like it would happen. I think the app must be asking for something...
Or it almost seems like the table of values got like misaligned somehow in the programming, like that. It's that type of thing. Because again, if it had done nothing, that would be one thing. But like it did apply equalization, just not the correct equalization. There was something wrong with the equalization that got applied. So yeah, I don't know. I don't have a fix for this specific issue other than the horrible fix of, replace the X3600H with some other model. But, I mean, the other thing is clearly not every X3600H owner has been reporting this. Then again, how many of them are using the Audyssey Editor app?
That's the other thing. It could be that this is happening with a bunch of receivers, and it's only 3600H owners that are crazy enough to sit there and remeasure everything with Room EQ Wizard.
Even if you do use the app, how many people check with a different measurement software to double check the results? I mean, that's a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of people.
Right.
So I really don't know. But I mean, what I'm getting at is it possible that this only affects some X3600H units? Like, it's not even the entire model wide, that it's specific units that were affected. We don't know. I have no idea if that's the case.
I would reach out to Audyssey. Yeah, that's what I would do.
All that's left.
I think at this point, that's what's left. Infinite Gary and Dave. Gary was watching another podcast. You son of a... What are you talking about? Another podcast?
It's not even two.
You've been cheating on us?
He watches so many others. It's, quintuple cheating.
I don't even know you anymore, man. I don't even know you anymore. I can't even look at you. Gary was watching another podcast on YouTube and noticed that the two hosts both had their microphones above their heads. One host was using a long, skinny microphone that was aiming down at an angle, and the other was using a wider, cylindrical mic, similar to what I use, but that was hanging down from a mount above the host's head. What impact does that have on the sound that gets recorded as compared to having the mics on stands in front of your face, like the way that we do it? And Dave would like to know which microphones we use. I use it's an older AT2020 Audio-Technica.
Yeah, Audio-Technica AT2020. So Tom's is the 2020, which is the XLR version.
Yeah, it's an older one. Yeah, they now make a USB version, which is the one I would buy now if I had the option.
Yeah, there's an AT2020 USB Plus. Which the microphone itself is the same, but it's got a USB connection. So that's
makes your life a lot easier.
Tom is using, but he's got the AT2020.
This is a true condenser mic, so its side address. It tends to it picks up a lot more stuff.
Yeah, if there's noise in your room, it'll pick up almost everything.
Yeah. So what Rob uses a dynamic mic, and the dynamic mics are a little bit more forgiving of your room. They tend to, you just point them at, they have less wide, like this thing picks up stuff from 360, almost 360 degrees around it. So the dynamic mics will be a little bit more directional. So those are the ones that you can like point down at you and stuff like that, and it's not quite as bad.
Well, we'll get a little bit more into that too. So specifically the model that I use is also Audio-Technica, but it's the AT2005 USB. One thing that I like about this microphone is that it actually has both USB and XLR connections. So handily, if, for example, if you were streaming something via one computer and then recording your voice via a second computer, you can connect both of those as long as you have an XLR preamp to connect to. But it has two connections. They are both active at the same time. So mine's the Audio-Technica AT2005 USB. So I did want to talk a little bit about the differences between different types of microphones. Because so what Gary was seeing, for the guy who had the sort of larger cylindrical mic and it was just positioned above his head instead of on a stand below at chest level, that was it's a condenser microphone, exactly like Tom's. Positioning it, slightly above your head versus slightly below your head, not going to make a difference, in terms of what gets picked up by the microphone as far as your voice goes. But in both cases, in Tom's case, in Tom's room needs to be quiet, or else you would have to, in post-production, you could denoise it or something if it's a constant, droning fan or something like that. And sometimes in the summer it is, because the air conditioning is going and the microphone picks it up, or his fan is going overhead and the microphone picks it up. You can denoise that after. But in terms of the microphone is picking it all up, and whether you put the microphone above your head or below at chest level, that's not going to make a difference.
Right.
My microphone being a dynamic microphone, and for anyone who's not watching on YouTube and has never seen, think of any singer on stage holding the microphone in their hand, or it's on a stand and they're playing guitar and the microphone is right in front of their face. That's your dynamic microphone, which, like Tom described, it really only picks up sound from directly in front of it, and your mouth has to be close to it. It's designed for that. The whole idea is that it's really not picking up sound from anything other than the sound that's going straight down the barrel of the microphone. That's the whole idea of it. And you'll see singers all the time, they're practically swallowing the microphone sometimes. They got it right up close to the mouth, and as soon as they move it away, and some singers use that as a technique, right? They've got a sustained note and they pull the microphone away, and that automatically makes it get quieter quickly, rather than them having to do that vocally. They can just pull the microphone away. So especially
trying to belt out a really strong higher note, they'll pull the mic far away so it doesn't clip the mic and maybe the preamp and everything else along the signal chain.
So what's funny to me is actually the microphone I use, I see a lot of other podcasters and that sometimes using it. It seems like nobody wants to put the microphone in front of their face and talk down the barrel of the microphone. I see people with dynamic microphones who they have it pointed straight up and it's below and it's at chest level, and they're trying to use it like a condenser mic, and that doesn't work. Or they have it coming in from the side and they want to side address it. That doesn't work. Or they have it far away because they want their whole face visible. They don't want their face obscured. Do not get a dynamic microphone if that is the way you want to position your microphone. It annoys me to no end. Like the guys over at AV Forums in the UK, I love their content, but good Lord, Steve, get a different microphone. You don't want the microphone that you have. His voice is always like 9 decibels quieter than all the other people talking on there. And it's like,
well, that's the other thing,
get a different mic.
So the dynamic, the condenser mics usually need some sort of phantom power. I mean, with your USB, it'll power it through USB. For me, I have to have a preamp that powers it for you. And it's very sensitive, but it also, because it's so sensitive about everything that's going on around you, if you're not the loudest thing going into it, it becomes very difficult to fix it if you haven't. That's why my microphone is close to my mouth. I don't have it like way off to the side. Then you could see all of me or whatever, because I end up having to bump up the volume so much, and then I have to noise reduce everything, and it becomes a real pain.
But Tom's mic is still physically farther from his mouth than my mic. My mic is right in front of my face. It is obscuring my face on the video if you've never watched it. I'm talking right down the barrel of my mic like a singer would.
I'm talking over the top of mine, and it's at a kind of a weird angle and everything. So,
and like I said, yours is a side address. People seem to hate talking down the barrels of microphones. Even if they have one where you should, they always always turn the microphone sideways or hold it straight up and down below their chin, and people seem to hate talking down the barrel of a microphone. I don't know what it is, but that seems to be most people. If you're getting a microphone for your guests, don't get dynamic microphones. Just don't do it. Get side address microphones, get condenser microphones. But I wanted to mention the last type because Gary saw this in the video he was talking about, the long, skinny microphone that was above the person's head and pointed down at an angle. That is a shotgun microphone. That's what he was using there. Now, a shotgun microphone is kind of like a long-range dynamic microphone. It only picks up sound basically from straight ahead, but it does so at a distance. Now, if you've ever seen a boom microphone on the set of a television series, that is what they're using. They're using a shotgun microphone. Now, typically with what they call a dead cat, so sometimes you'll see the one is just like a long foam cover that's on it. You might see that on the top of a camera being used, but they'll also have one that, is this big, fluffy, long thing that's on top of it. Usually boom microphones have that. They call that a dead cat windscreen. So I'm showing some images on YouTube if you're following along of Rhodes, what they call their video mic. I think it's NRT video mic. That is probably the most popular boom microphone that there is to use these days because it connects to everything, or you can use it desk mounted. You can hang it overhead.
I actually looked at these. I looked at these for a group I was in because we were having problems miking people. Yeah. Or hearing people on video because we were just using the camera and the camera stuff, and it was like, well, can we get a microphone? I'm like, well, you need a shotgun mic, right? Number one. Number two, you need somebody to sit there and point it at people. You can't just set it up on top of the camera, and as they walk in and out of the frame, it's going to be fine. That's not the way it's got to be aimed at them, and that's you got to aim it at them on movie sets. So that's why you've got the person holding the big long stick and aiming the boom microphone at people. But the Rode video mic is a good choice because you can plug it in via 3.5 millimeter, and they were smart. They connected a TRRS plug onto it, but it's dual mono, so no matter what you're plugging this thing into, phone, camera, whatever, the signal is going to get to it. And then it also has a USB connection, and you can just USB connect it to a PC. So it's very, very popular. And if you are the person who doesn't want the microphone right in front of your face, a dynamic microphone like mine, but you can't really get away with a condenser microphone because the environment you're in is a little bit noisy and you don't want all of it picked up, then shotgun mic is what you want. You want the microphone that can be farther away but has to be aimed right at you and doesn't pick up all the ambient noise. So the price since you and I basically sit really still, there's really no reason why we couldn't use one of these. It's just
I mean, I prefer having the microphone in front of my face because I don't want my whole face visible because nobody needs to look at that. So I'm perfectly fine. And then there's the price point.
No one should be looking at this. It's a podcast. I don't know why we have people looking at it anyways.
The dynamic microphones are the least expensive. That's going to be your least expensive option to still get decent quality. So mine is $80. That AT2005 USB from Audio-Technica, $80. Tom's AT2020 is $100. If you go for the USB version, the AT2020 USB Plus, it's $130. But then when you go all the way up to the Rode video mic, that's $250. $250 for that Rode shotgun microphone. So that's what's going on there.
And this one that I bought, when I bought it, it was like $100. It was like $99.
It still is because it's not $100 still.
Yeah, $100. So, Jesper, or Jesper, or whatever his name is, in Denmark. Jesper and his fiancée are currently living in an apartment, but they already have plans to move into a house next year. Good job, buddy. It's hard to do these days. That house will have a room that can be dedicated to being a home theater, 14 by 20 by 8.
Nice
with
size.
A door, that's good. A door so the room can be fully closed off, about the size of my theater. A little, I think a tiny bit smaller, about the same size.
All around.
Jesper just convinced his fiancée to give up their dining room in their apartment for the next few months so that he could try out his home theater setup in there while they wait to move. You, sir, are a hero. Is what you are. I don't know how you did that. That is
temporary. Only temporary.
I don't even know how you broach that subject. So this room is 15 by 12 by 9 with an opening on the right and the sliding glass doors in the balcony to the left. It's all bare and reflective surfaces in there, and the new L-shaped couch is sitting right up against the back wall. But since they know it's temporary, he isn't too concerned about that. So he's got kind of some pictures here. Mm-hmm. Well, he even mounted the speakers to the wall.
Yeah. I'm not quite sure. It almost looks like it's concrete because it's got like those. So it looks like marks and holes in the walls that finished concrete sometimes has. I'm not quite sure.
I can't see this well.
Regardless, it's hardwood floor, windows on the left, opening on the right, and then hard flat surfaces everywhere. But this is temporary, so we're not going to worry too much about the acoustics right this moment. He mostly wanted to try out his 5-speaker system.
All right, getting to the equipment he has now has been a long journey. His parents gifted him a 55-inch Samsung 4K TV a couple of years ago. The built-in speakers were so bad that he went out and quickly bought a Samsung Soundbar Plus a subwoofer. Mm-hmm. Soundbar Plus a subwoofer. I don't know if that's...
Well, Soundbar Plus sub. That's the typical package, wireless.
They lasted him about a month. Then he started listening to us and started auditioning speakers. He fell in love with the B&W 700 series during his auditions. That was expensive love.
Not too crazy, though. At least it's the 700 series, not the Diamond series or something.
Yeah, he had to have them, but he couldn't afford a full setup all at once. So he started with a pair of 707 bookshelf speakers plus a NAD integrated amp and a turntable. You weren't listening to us too closely, were you? He absolutely loved them and really felt like they were the right choice for him. A year later, he was able to add the 703 towers and HTM71 center, and to power a full immersive audio configuration in the future room, he got a NAD T778 receiver. He says, "Don't kill me, Tom." I don't care if you buy a NAD receiver.
Not only that, that's a really nice receiver, man. I'd be completely happy with that one. That's really nice.
It has 9 built-in amps, can process 11 speakers, and uses DRAC for room control. For room correction, it's got NAD's modular design, which is total BS, but whatever. So a future HDMI 2.1 board replacement is supposedly in the works. Everybody take a deep breath. And just hold it. Hold it. It's coming. It's coming. So, we might have noticed no subwoofer purchase yet. He wants to have 2 subwoofers in the future house, possibly more than 2 subs. I don't think this room is as big as you think it is. The room is rectangular, so he intends to put the 2 subs across the room from each other, and he likes the looks of the smaller footprint of SVS's cylinder subs. All right. Okay, on to the final questions. Finally, we're on to the questions here. The NAD T778 runs its 2 subwoofer outputs in mono. If everything goes according to plan, that shouldn't be a problem, right? But since they aren't in the new house yet, he can't be 100% certain that ideal subwoofer placement will be possible, or maybe he will just want a different look. He saw how the controls offered by the SVS 16 Ultra subs with their app, DSP, and PEQ filters made it possible to manipulate them quite easily and get them working together nicely, even if placement wasn't ideal. The 4000 series subs appear to offer the same controls. But he was initially looking at the PC2000, the non-pro version. Would it be worth upgrading to something else so that he can have those built-in controls? Does he need to go all the way to the PC4000 if he still wants the cylinder form factor? No, the 2000 Pro has all that.
In fact, the entire current SVS lineup now has the app control and has the 3 PEQ filters and has all of those things. And
you're going to use none of them because you're going to place these correctly. And a PC 2000's
Pro,
even without the Pro, are going to crush this room.
Oh, output
you do not
wise,
need them.
that was never the problem.
You do not need them.
He was always thinking PC 2000 in terms of output and extension. And, I mean, honestly, that's objectively probably a bit more than you need, but there's no smaller, less expensive cylinder, and we agree with you. We love the cylinder form factor.
Yes.
The footprint makes sense. We love the form factor, even if it is like within a walkway. If you're brushing by a cylinder with its carpet surface,
I run into mine all the time.
Not
it doesn't hurt me at all.
It doesn't hurt the sub, doesn't hurt you.
Comes with the feet.
That's right.
I mean, it's got so many. It's got the sound path isolation feet.
That's
got so many bonuses to it. So yes, I would.
So
100% agree.
The thing is, I don't even
2000s.
know if you're buying new today if you'll be able to get the PC 2000. I think you're going to end up with the PC 2000 Pro.
I mean, you could wait till Christmas and see if they do that,
if they do the
or Black Friday sale, or whatever that sale is that they sometimes do. You could hope.
Yes,
you could hope.
But the super simple thing is here: if you're concerned at all, and you're like, maybe I'll want the controls, maybe I'll use them, maybe I won't, but I just want to have them in case. Get the 2000 Pro, the PC 2000 Pro, and you will have all the controls that you saw and read about with the 16 Ultra series, because happily, they started with that. If you only learned about the app and the controls when the 16 Ultra first came out, that at the time, that was the only series that had it.
Yeah.
SVS being SVS, they've worked those features all the way down through their entire lineup now. The 1000 Pro series has those features now too. So PC 2000 Pros, and you are sleeping easy, no worries.
Yeah, this whole series of questions is basically putting the cart before the horse. But that's
okay.
I
mean, sometimes you wanna feel
we
good
like to
about
plan.
this. That's right.
So what about getting a mini DSP? Would it be better than using the DSP that's built into the PC 2000 Pro? Maybe it would give him the opportunity to add more than 2 subwoofers. First of all, you do not need more than 2 subwoofers. You've got 2 people in this house, and you've got an enclosed room, and you're going to place your subs properly.
And it's a rectangle. Yeah, it seems unlikely that with the cylinder form factor, that the
only thing that's going to maybe mess you up is the fact that you bought towers. If you had bought bookshelves, you would have easier time placing those things, I think, and therefore you would have more room for your PC 2000 Pro up front. But that's about the only thing I would worry about. But with a 55-inch TV,
a box subwoofer is going to be a whole lot different. It would probably have a larger footprint.
No, I wasn't saying that, but I was saying about the tower speaker just being physically larger than a stand or putting the.
But the room he's putting in is not tiny. 14 by 20, so it should be absolutely fine.
I have room.
Yeah, in terms of placement.
So I mean, not that.
I mean, SDs. I'm never mad about having a mini DSP 2x4 HD, but the odds that you would actually need it to configure a system are really, really low, in my opinion.
Not only that, if you wanted to have 4 subs in here, just buy 2 Y splitters.
Yeah,
Bob's your uncle. You're done.
Yeah, you've got the type of room and the opportunity to place your subwoofers in such a way that you shouldn't require the
he's got
individual
DRAC already
EQs. Yeah, you've got
right. He's got DRAC already. So you're gonna get DRAC again? Get 2 DRACs? How many DRACs you need? You only need 1 DRAC. 1 DRAC's enough DRACs. Too many DRACs.
Yeah. So I think you are in good shape. And if somehow we reach that bridge in the future, we can cross it then. I do not think you need to budget for that immediately before you've even moved house.
So for right now, in his apartment, would it make sense to get a single PC 2000 Pro and then add the second sub once they're in the house? Even though the apartment room is open on the right, you still have plenty of output, right? Dude, you guys are not married yet. You want to show all this crazy straight up front? You want to lead with the crazy? You already convinced her to give up the dining room for a little while. Believe me, you're on thin ice, sir. You need to you need to slow roll this hand. You're waiting, and you're getting them both at the same time later on. That's what I'm gonna say.
Okay,
that's what I'm gonna say. I think that if you let all the crazy out at once, she's gonna be like, "What am I marrying a Finn?" Yeah, I don't know. Do Denmark people not like Finland people? I don't know how that stuff works.
I don't know how it works, but that seems to be the thing. How somehow the Finnish always get picked on in the Scandinavian, in Scandinavian comedy routines that I've watched. Somehow they do seem to pick on the Finnish. I don't
understand. I know one couple from Finland, and they are delightful. They're delightful people. They're very serious.
I'm looking at.
They have a sense of humor, but it's a little dark. But they're good people. I'm
looking at the pictures that he sent, and I'm thinking that the one plant that has survived the moving of the dining room is the only place where the cylinder sub could go. And so, I mean, if there's a deal and you pick up a PC 2000 Pro cylinder sub, yes, output-wise, in an apartment, I am not worried that you're going to be not having sufficient output. Thankfully, it does come with the subwoofer isolation feet on the cylinder form factor.
Even with that, dude, you're not going to be making any friends doing this. In
an apartment, in any room, I want the subwoofer isolation feet, but especially in an apartment, I want the subwoofer isolation feet. So at least you'll have that. I'm not seeing where in your current apartment room it would make sense to put 2 of them instantly. So if you do it, one is perfectly fine to try out for now, get the second one later. SVS gives you the entire year to add the second one at the discounted price, so you're not even losing out on the package price.
We assume that works over there too, as well as it works here. I don't see why it wouldn't. Yeah, I don't see why it wouldn't. I'm just going to continue to say no. Because
that's fair enough.
I think if you start shoehorning every speaker you possibly can in here before you even move, they will disappear into your theater room.
Oh yeah.
That's going to be larger, and it's going to be dedicated, and it's going to have a door that's going to close, and she's not going to go in there. And then when she does go in there, it's going to be dark, and she's not going to be looking at anything other than the screen. Okay, so that it will disappear in there. Right now, she's going to be walking by him every day getting madder and madder. I mean, I don't know about you, but my wife would not be happy. I mean, she's mad at me. I have 3 boxes. They're not even big. They're just little boxes that I need to open them up and take pictures of the content so I can do reviews. And she's like, what is the deal with these boxes? Are you going to get rid of these things or not? I'm like, what do you care? They're not in your way. They're just sitting there.
I'm just
I hate them.
picturing that he plans to replace the plant with a cylinder sub, and I just don't see that going over well.
I just slow roll. You gotta, you can't show all the crazy at once. You gotta get them hooked first, and then you show the crazy, and they're like, "Oh, what have I done?" And then you're like, "But you can fix me." She's like, "Yeah, I can fix you."
There you go.
She can't. You're broken. We all know that. I'm broken too. It's fine. So he's saving up for a projector as well. He's leaning towards the Epson TW9400, which is the same as the 6050 UB. Is there another projector in the same price range that we would recommend more highly? He ideally would like to get a model with lens memories for switching between 16:9 and 2.35:1. Don't buy it yet. But yes, there's something. Rob's going to answer. I'm going to get coffee.
More coffee.
Okay,
yeah. So I mean, I agree. Actually, wait until you're in the house. But no harm in looking beforehand. So we know that the new models that Epson has announced in Europe first, in Europe and the UK first, they won't be coming to North America until 2022. But it's their new laser models, the LS 11000 and the LS 12000, both of which are priced a fair bit higher than the 5050 UB and the 6050 UB, or the TW 9300 and 9400. 9400 is definitely the 6050 UB, but priced higher than those by a fair amount. They're about 1,300 British pounds more. So like the LS 11000 is about 1,200 pounds more than the TW 9400. So there's definitely a price gap in there. I'm not sure how to convert all that to, I imagine it's euro, right, in Denmark? I don't even know. I might be wrong about the currency, but there is a price gap there. So I'm not entirely sure what's going on with the lamp-based models. I don't know if there are plans to replace the 5050 UB and 6050 UB or not, because the laser models that came out, that seems to be what the new ones are going to be. Right. So assuming that's the price point you want to stick to, you don't want to pay more for the new laser models that were announced, there's nothing better, in my opinion, than the 5050 UB and the 6050 UB. Those are the tops. They have the lens memories that you want. So it's either going to be that's the pick for now, unless there's another announcement that we don't know about yet to replace them, or it's paying more to get the laser-based models, but you said you wanted to stick to this price point, so I think you've already got the right choice.
So as mentioned, they're only in the apartment for a few more months, so no point in worrying too much about that room. But there are any simple suggestions from what we've seen in his pictures? Yeah, you just shut up. don't buy anything else.
Well, I had assumed if things still look like they look in the picture, I don't know if they do. You can pull your center speaker forward. That shouldn't be too much of a problem. Right now, the
center speaker should be forward.
This low flat table that he's got, so you can pull that forward. You can also put something kind of squishy beneath the center speaker, because right now it looks like it's just hard surface on hard surface. So mouse pads.
Instead of having a vacuum cleaner on your back of your couch, maybe just stack up like a big blanket, in case it gets cold.
Or cushions, cushions behind your head. Because I agree with you. Yeah. We're not going to acoustically treat this apartment that you're only in for a couple more months. But you could put some pillows behind your head while you're sitting on the low-backed couch, so that you don't have literally just this very hard reflective surface right behind your head. So some pillows, I'm sure, are doable. That's about it.
Shade on that naked light bulb. I don't know. something like that. No, I wouldn't. I just maybe move things around a little bit, but other than that, I wouldn't do much else. Eric has the detached garage with open roof rafters that we've talked about before. I vaguely remember this, and I'm looking at the pictures, and now I'm remembering it more.
That's the idea of the pictures. Help remind us.
Listening to our podcast already convinced him that he needs to focus on the room's acoustics prior to worrying about a speaker upgrade. God. If I finally have gotten through to somebody. I'm like, I wrote an article on speaker upgrading, and out of 6 steps, the very last step was speaker shopping.
Right.
Or 9 steps or whatever it was. I'm like, fix everything else first. We previously went through ideas for treating and finishing the ceiling, as well as other concerns about trying to turn the garage into a finished space. But with a 5-month-old baby, Erica's working with no time and no budget. Fully finishing the garage is way out on the back burner for now, and even putting insulation into the ceiling base is a bigger project than he wants to tackle. So, given that the looks of the room aren't a priority for him, would putting raw insulation in the corners be a good place to start? He's got black velvet curtains from Amazon up front, and he loves the way they frame the screen. Could he just hide corner traps behind base corner traps behind those? Are they acoustically transparent enough? And what is the absolute cheapest and easiest way to add some worthwhile absorption in here? Well, I mean, we wrote the article on AV Gadgets, Andrew did, that has he after I made him write an article about room acoustics, he's like, I think I should get some room treatments. I'm like, if I had known that you didn't have room treatments, you wouldn't have been writing.
Oh, he already
me,
had plenty,
geek.
but he wanted more. Yeah.
But yeah, so he wanted more. So he did DIY'd some, and he's in Canada. I don't remember if this guy's in Canada or not. For some reason, I felt like he was in Canada.
I don't believe so.
But he had some very easy suggestions on how to make some yourself. As far as base trapping in the corner with the velvet curtains, again, we're going back to what we talked about earlier when it comes to acoustically transparent fabric. Velvet is not acoustically transparent, but the corner traps, for the most part, are addressing bass.
Yes.
And the velvet is not stopping the bass from going through.
Right.
So while as at the first reflection point, we still worry about the treble, we're not worried about the treble in the corners. We're worried about the bass. So you could literally just stack up raw insulation, just Google chunk trap, chunk corner bass trap, and it's literally getting the rigid fiberglass, and you want the rigid stuff, not the cheap stuff, simply because it stacks better.
Regular
and it keeps
Roxel can work for these too, though, because that's not rigid, but it holds its shape. It doesn't it's not the
just need to be a little careful.
It's not the pink
it,
stuff. It's not the fiberglass insulation. It's rock wool. So that works. I think that's a bit cheaper than the actual rigid insulation. So that could work too. Just eyeballing his photo though, like with the regular method is, you get ones that are 24-inch on center and 4 feet tall. So you can basically just cut it in half so that it's roughly 2 feet by 2 feet, and then cut it diagonally so that you have triangles. That's the easy way to make super chunks that go in your corners. But just eyeballing the photo that he's got there, I don't know if you can fit one that's 2 feet wide, 2 feet long, and then the hypotenuse going across that corner, because his screen might be closer to the side wall than super chunks would fit.
You'd have to. And if that were the case, you could literally make the chunks and then just shave off
a bit extra. That's a bit extra cutting, a bit extra time, but that.
But it would be cheap because you're literally not doing any framing. You're not doing anything else. You're just buying the insulation and cutting it to shape.
Yeah. So it's the price of the insulation. Can't get away from that, but that's going to happen no matter what. But aside from just the physical size and possibly having to do a few extra cuts beyond the typical of just making the triangles, is that really going to make a big difference in here when you've got these open rafter ceiling? That's my concern. My concern is I want whatever you do, whatever amount of time and money you put into this, to have a noticeable, worthwhile impact. And I'm like, when you got this just open rafter ceiling and you're in a non-finished detached garage, I'm like, is putting some insulation in your corners actually going to do that much for you? I question it. Yeah.
I would look up at my rafters too and just measure. Like, are you 24 on center? If you're 24 on center, then in your rafters, then you can. I mean, the whole point of the rigid fiberglass is that it stays in place.
Right.
So even if it's 20 on center, right? You can buy the rigid fiberglass.
Yeah.
You can push it up into the rafters. Yeah. Right. I mean, we're literally just talking about cutting it to shape if it's too big,
Right.
or if it's 24 in center, it's going to be the right size. You're just going to push it in there, and you're going to friction fit it, and it's going to be fine. Now, okay, you're going to read something online where people are going to tell you that it's carcinogenic. It is not.
That wasn't the worry. The worry I had was what we talked about before, which is that he doesn't have a ridge vent for this. He doesn't have soffit vents at every single bay, so you don't want to seal in these bays because that airflow needs to be able to get there.
But you could just put up some things.
Well, yeah, because if he's
there,
not finishing the ceiling at all, if the insulation is visible and you don't care about that, and you're just friction fitting there, and there actually is an air gap behind the insulation, so in between the insulation and the actual sheathing of the garage roof, if there's still an air gap there, and you don't feel every single bay in here, so that air, all I'm getting at is air needs to be able to get to the sheathing of your roof. As long as there's still a way for air to circulate and get to the sheathing of your roof, then just having lightly friction fit insulation in some of the bays
so that it's
up there,
flush to the front of the 2x4s or 2x6s or whatever that are up there.
Yeah.
So there's an air gap behind, and then you leave like a foot gap between each one.
And if the widths are already appropriate, that's even less work than making the corner chaps. So.
And then literally at this point, all you're doing is waiting until you have time and money to buy black fabric and just line the whole thing with black fabric and staple it up there.
I
know, you could do that. So
to me, I would get at more at that, because I don't really think that corner bass traps are going to make a big noticeable acoustic difference in here. Having that whole wide open rafter of the ceiling, that's the place to put something if you can.
Right. Let's see here. The back wall is the garage door, and it still gets used and needs to be able to open. He's got foam panels stuck to the inside of the garage door itself. Is there any way to put more effective absorption panels anywhere at the back of the room or in the rear corners? Would they need to be freestanding panels? Well, foam sucks. So,
it's not doing a whole lot. I mean, it's doing a little bit in the highest frequencies, but it's not doing a whole lot.
I actually have an article about that too, about what's the difference between foam and not foam. And I'll link.
And he definitely wouldn't be able to just put super chunks back there, because that would be in the way of the door track system. So that's not going to. And I mean, you could, if you're just putting some 4-inch thick insulation, like mostly against the sidewall, and then the 4-inch part is against the back wall, because it looks like you have that much space. I mean, you could, but again, I question how much audibly that's really going to do for you, because that's not addressing like a primary reflection. A primary reflection could be on the garage door itself, but if it's a garage door that still needs to open, I don't know how much you want to put.
Well, this is the thing.
Absorption
I'm looking at there's two kind of garage doors. There's the kind of garage door, and I'm trying to figure out what kind you have here, but it looks like the roll-up kind. And if it's the roll-up kind, that means you have about 1 foot, maybe 18-inch sections that then have a hinge that bend.
I can't quite see from that outside, but from the track on the inside.
Yeah, it's definitely a roll-up type.
Yeah, it's got to be. Yeah.
It's got to be. So it doesn't, because of the way that you have this insulation on here, this foam on here, it looks like a solid door, but it's not. It bends all the way up.
Yeah.
So again, yes, would you be able to put normal panels on here? Well, they would have to be long and thin.
Sure.
And then connected to each of the sections of the garage. But I agree with kind of what you said, which is, do they have to be freestanding panels? They do not, but it would make your life a heck of a lot easier.
Well, yeah, because you could have a couple of freestanding panels that go behind your seat. Easy to move out of the way when you need to, because they're just on stands. But those could go behind your seat and be much more effective than just the foam that's on the door back there right now. That would actually potentially be audible if you had some proper 4-inch thick, maybe even 6-inch thick freestanding panels that stand behind your seat. That one I could actually envision making an audible difference and being somewhat worth your time. So to me, that I would do those. I would very potentially do those, the freestanding panels that you can put behind your seat, something on your ceiling, because to me that's the number one. And I'm not really that worried about the super chunk corner traps, because I just don't foresee them doing a ton for you in this room.
I don't know. I don't see it, that the super chunk traps make more sense once you've done everything else They're not necessarily the last thing I would do, but they are certainly not the first thing I would do.
No, I mean, you'd want to be getting towards, okay, I'm actually finishing this garage as an interior space. Then I'm going to have bass trapping in there.
I mean, if you could make 4 freestanding panels, basically, and have 2 at the back,
and 2 at the first reflection points,
2 at the first reflection points up front, and then put insulation on your ceiling, we talked about, I think that would make the most difference.
Agreed.
Just like full stop. We've said before about having an air gap behind acoustic panels and how it's a good thing. Any way to apply that in here? So there's 2 ways you can create an air gap. You can make it integral to the design of the panel itself, meaning that there is an air gap built in. You have a 2x4, and then you put 2 inches of insulation at the front of it, and then there's a gap. Then there's essentially a gap at the back, and then you mount that flush to the wall. Or you create your panel, however thick it is, 2 inches, 3 inches, 4 inches thick. 6 inches for that one dude who was being crazy. And then you mount it off the wall a certain distance. If you made freestanding panels, there is going to be an air gap. Okay.
And I think he was thinking of the corner bass traps mostly, because that was primarily what he asked about in his actual question.
You don't really need an air gap back there. I mean, you can, and it certainly can be effective, but with the chunk traps, the design is based on being easy to create by anybody.
You were saying you want to make the least amount of time, the least amount of effort. Cutting triangles out of rectangles is the least amount of time and effort.
This is like a 2-hour project. It's going to take you longer to open the damn box than it's going to be to build the traps themselves. So the freestanding DIY panels are going to be more difficult for sure. They really aren't. I mean, if you have any ability to, I mean, the fact that you got that foam insulation on that back wall and it looks the way it does, makes me think that you're handier than I am, and I can make DIY. I've made every panel in here except for the 3 I bought from.
We are talking about rectangular frames, nothing super fancy. Doesn't have to be beveled or chamfered or anything. If you don't want it to be, you could just some sticks and you put them together at 90-degree angles.
That's right. So making it stand up higher, making freestanding, giving it a little foot, that's a little bit more difficult. But
you can just make the side frames longer. That's really all you need to do, and then give them some T-bar feet at the bottom. The other place that you could apply an air gap is in those ceiling rafters that we talked about. Friction fit up there. They'll have it. You actually, I would demand you have an air gap back there because you want the air to be able to move against the sheathing of your roof. So that will be part of that for more important reasons than acoustics.
Sam's theater room is an enclosed rectangle, 2,200 cubic feet in total. He's got dual SVS PB2000 subs, one in the front right corner and one in the rear left corner, and he thinks the bass is awesome. But he's got 2 rows of seats, and he got to talking with SVS, and they said that if he had 4 subwoofers, the bass could be even better for every seat in the room, was our opinion. And if you were to purchase 2 more subs, should you stick with SVS? Should you get the pair of PB2000 Pros to go with his PB2000s, or could he save a bit of money and get a different brand, maybe HSU or Monoprice, sorry. They are not wrong. I think objectively, you can measure, and you will find that your bass will be more even across all of your seats if you have 4 subwoofers in one subwoofer in each corner. My first question to you would be, before you talk to SVS, did you think you needed more even bass on all of your seats?
He said at the beginning, he's like, my bass sounds awesome, but could it be awesomer?
I think the answer to your question is you will have spent a ton of money and be like, well, I guess it's better. And is that worth the $2,000+ or whatever it is for these things? I think it's like $1,800 for these things that you're going to end up paying. Because I would say
days it's more, because the PB2000 Pros are $1,100 each now. You get $100 off if you buy 2 of them, but that's still $2,100 if you did that.
I have a hard time, like I have no problems recommending you get a second subwoofer. I have very hard time getting you to go to 4 in a room that's this size.
The gap from 1 sub to 2 sub can be huge.
It can be a very significant, audible, everybody knows is a difference.
The gap from 2 to 4, that's a refinement. And I mean, yeah, Tom said it, and I agree, and all the data says it, and Todd Welty will tell you, objectively speaking, you can get more uniform bass across a large seating area. He's got 2 rows of seats, so we're going to count that as a larger seating area. With the 4 subwoofers, SVS is not wrong, Todd Welty is not wrong, none of us are disagreeing on the objective side, but the difference from 2 subs to 4 subs is not anywhere as large as the difference from 1 sub to 2 sub. 1 sub to 2 subs, monstrous difference. 2 subs to 4 subs, a little bit of difference.
Yeah.
It's a huge time diminishing returns. So my absolute advice of what to do is play a bass sweep on repeat. You go sit yourself in all of your seats, both rows, and listen to that bass sweep playing over and over. And in any of the seats, maybe there's one seat that you honestly don't care that much about, but in any of the seats, does that bass sweep sound significantly different? If there are ups and downs, I'm assuming he's already applied EQ to this thing, but even if not, if there are ups and downs in the volume of that bass sweep, is it the same ups and downs in all of the seats? And if it is, you don't need to go to 4 subs. You don't. Now, if you're noticing significant differences, ups and downs in volume across that bass sweep from seat to seat, and you're like, and I really do care that every single seat in here gets the exact same experience, 4 subs can be an improvement. But nobody's going to tell you that it's impossible for it to be an improvement. So that's my advice. I suspect strongly you're going to find out that if there are any differences, they're not that big from seat to seat, and you can save yourself a whole pile of money here.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I just... It's most of the time when somebody says they want the 2 extra subs and they try to justify it to me, what I'm looking at more than anything is, are they just really looking to buy something? Because if they are, this is a perfectly reasonable thing to buy. This is something that they're going to be able to buy and say, I know that I made a difference in my room. I know my bass is better, and I know these things, even if no one else in the universe.
You could probably show it in Room EQ Wizard, because you take a measurement at each seat and then you overlay all those graphs on top of each other. And before they were almost on top of each other, but you could spot a little bit of air between some of those graphs, and now they're all perfectly overlapping. And if that just makes you feel good, and the money was no problem, I don't have a problem with it.
This is to me like along the same lines of buying an amp for most people.
There's that. Yeah.
They don't need it.
Times.
It doesn't really make any difference, but it makes them feel better, and they wanted to buy something anyways, and now they have an amp. So
in terms of what additional subwoofers you could add to this, if you don't want to pay the $2,100 now, unfortunately, for a new pair of PB2000 Pros, Monoprice Monolith and some, not every single one of their models is back in stock, but a whole bunch of them are. And the Monolith 12, which is $800 a piece, which used to be the price of the PB2000 before the Pro and before the price increase on the 2000 Pro. The original PB2000 used to cost $800. That's what the Monolith 12 costs, and its specs are nigh on like identical to the original PB2000. So all day long, I would point you at a Monolith 12. I think that's the perfect match for your existing PB2000.
Can you even find those things? I thought everything was out of stock.
That's what I just said. They're mostly back in stock. Yeah. So those ones are, the 12s are. That's absolutely what I get point you to. HSU does have their VTF2 Mark V. That is $700 with the shipping included, and they'll take $50 off of that if you get 2 of them, so $1,350. So that is the least expensive, and VTF2 Mark Vs would pair up with PB2000s in your room size just nicely as well. It's just the form factor of them is a little different and all that. Yeah. So, but those are both less expensive than new PB2000 Pros and would absolutely play along just fine with them if you do this.
Brannon is trying to set up a soundproof studio in his business. He wants to install a 7.2.4 speaker system that could be played at loud volumes, but the studio shares a wall with one other office. He was planning on renovating that wall so that it would have staggered studs, insulation, putty on any outlets, 2 layers of drywall with green glue inside the studio. He'll ask about a door in a minute. So as far as that shared office wall, do we have any other recommendations to make it as soundproof as possible? You need a room within a room. That's the only way that it really, truly, you have to float the floor, you got to float the ceiling, you got to float to everything. It's not just that. It's not just that one party wall that you're worried about.
That's the unfortunate thing.
You got to worry about the whole thing. I have been in these rooms, within a room. I have been in them before. It is unlike anything. I mean, it's not, when you walk in there, it just seems like a normal room. It's just when you go through the doorway, you're like, what is going on with this doorway? Because it's like 2 doors.
Sure.
and there's
Looks
a
like an
gap
airlock.
between them. It's like an airlock, and you're like, but when you get in there, you can play it as loud as you want. You can't hear anything,
Right.
But it is not cheap. So we're going to point you towards somebody who can give you all the deets on that.
Yeah, that's soundproofingcompany.com. Contact them. Actually, honestly, it's easiest to talk to them on the phone because otherwise you're trying to write out everything in their contact us. Honestly, give them a call because a real person picks up the phone and you can talk to them about what you want to do soundproofing wise. I wish it were as simple as you can just soundproof the party wall and that's going to take care of everything.
Right.
But if vibrations can, I mean, the floor is still going to be attached to each other, right? This studio and the office next to it. If vibrations get into that, if vibrations get into the ceiling, which is also going to be shared, like, if those vibrations can get into anything that is shared, the wall by itself, your plan for the wall is not a bad plan. You've done all the 4 steps that they're going to tell you about. There's nothing wrong with that. That might end up being what you're doing. Although in this instance, with what you've described, we might want to do the full double stud wall, which takes up more space. It costs a bit more and takes up more space, but you might want to do the full double stud wall. But that would be on top of a new subfloor just inside the studio. The ceiling is going to be attached to new walls that are separate from the existing walls. So exactly what Tom said, a full room within a room to really do what you want to do properly. I wish I had better news because he has said how he doesn't want to go crazy on the price, but there's not really much of a way around it. Like, I suspect what Soundproofing Company might come back to you is you've got the existing structure. If you do sound clips and hat channels on all of that existing structure, and we're talking the ceiling too. So ceiling and all the walls, sound clips and hat channels, that's closer to a room within a room because that has mechanically separated all of the surfaces inside the studio. But the floor is still going to be an issue. You're still going to have to do something about the floor to stop vibrations from going between the studio and the office next to you. Definitely talk to Soundproofing Company because they can go into more detail, and as particularly on the construction of it itself, they can really point you to exactly what you need to do. But from our perspective, what we can tell you, your plan is you did nothing wrong in your envisioning of the plan, but we don't think it's going to get you the results that you're looking for. You have to do more.
Right. Yeah. So he says, what can be done for an interior door on a budget of about $1,000 or less? I mean, it's a solid core door is the very least, but you really want like it's going to be like
exterior.
We haven't even talked about HVAC. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the question.
HVAC because I mean, you don't want the sound to get out from underneath the door. So now you want an exterior door that has the weather stripping and everything, all that stuff. But you still need to get air in and out of this room at some point. People are going to get awfully lightheaded. So there's that to be considered as well.
I mean, I imagine it probably has forced air coming in some form. You've probably got air conditioning and heating that can come into this studio room, but we don't know what the air return situation is, and that might be an additional part of this construction that you have to get into. Because
I have a feeling that this is I feel a feeling this is going to be a lost cause because this is going to end up being
a
way
lot more money than he was looking at.
Think.
Yeah.
If you're worried about the price of a door,
right,
you ain't got the money for this, Hoss.
Well, and I mean, that's why he was saying,
either.
this is what I want to do on the party wall because that's enough money as far as what he wanted to spend, and it's so. I mean, the thing is,
it's about 1/6 of what you need to spend.
Yeah,
that doesn't include HVAC.
But like, let's say he did just what he described. All right, he goes to a stagger stud wall, 2 layers of drywall with green glue on the inside of that stagger stud wall, putty pads on the outlets. You're going to have to do something to address the ceiling and floor. You're just going to have to because those are mechanically shared by the 2 rooms. But let's say that's what you did, and you changed out the current door for an exterior door, and somehow magically the HVAC is already not a problem. If you did all that, is it more soundproof than what's there now, which is just your standard non-load bearing stick frame wall with an interior hollow core door? Is it more soundproof than that? Yes, it is. It is more soundproof than that. Is it enough that you could play a movie loud in the studio and not have the people in the office hear it? I mean, not hear it at all, definitely not. Would it be muffled? Yeah, it would be muffled. It would be quieter than just the stick frame wall with a hollow core door. It'll be quieter than that. I don't know if that's quiet enough. And the ceiling actually bothers me a lot. You're going to have to do something to the ceiling.
Yeah. That's and lastly he asks, how much does acoustic caulking help? Hell, you fill the whole room up with it? It'll help a lot.
I mean, if you're doing sound, you want acoustic caulking. Every seam,
yeah.
you want it, because the whole idea is air cannot get in or out of this room except in the controlled fashion via your HVAC system, which also needs to be soundproof addressed. Right? It's an ordeal to make a room that is attached to another room and have it be soundproof. It's an ordeal. But soundproofing company, they're the people to talk to about it.
Yeah, it's not a small thing. So, best of luck. First of all, I know I've been kind of flippant about this, and I don't want you to take offense. It's like one of those. It's one of those things where people say, "All I want to do is just this." All I want to do is just, and then whatever they say after the word "just," you're like, you have no idea how much you just said in just a couple of words. Like, I just want to be able to watch a movie as loud as I want without disturbing anybody else. Yeah, okay. That you just said, $25,000 worth of words. And I'm not saying that's how much this is going to cost, but I wouldn't be surprised if I was pretty close, because this ends up being a lot of money. And it's simply because of how sound works and how
vibrations,
it is
man.
to really
Vibrations through any medium.
If you were turning the whole thing into an aquarium, how much do you think it would cost? Because this is essentially the same thing. Like, if you wanted to fill that room up with water and not have it leak anywhere, that's how much this would cost. And would you want the seams, all of the edges, sealed by something if you were building an aquarium holding water? Yes, you would. That's what your acoustic caulk is for. Derek is back. I didn't know you left, but welcome back, I suppose. He asked about the inexpensive Yamo speaker package on Amazon, as well as getting our speaker suggestions for options that cost about $300 a pair, but we didn't know anything about his room. Shockingly. It's probably because we didn't pay attention when you told... Oh, you didn't tell us? Okay. So it's a dedicated room in this basement, 18 by 13 by 7. He'll be sitting 11 feet from the front wall, and he's using this 85-inch Sony X900 HTV. He's still considering the Yamo Studio speakers since they're so affordable, but he really liked the looks of the Ascend HTM 200SC speakers that Rob suggested. Now that we know a little bit more about his room, do we have a stronger opinion on what he should get? I don't remember those Yamo speakers. I remember, but the HTM 200SEs should have no problems at that distance. You're 11 feet away.
Yeah.
$300
18
a pair.
by 13-foot room. Totally fine. Yep.
Yeah, 11 feet away from your speakers is not the furthest you can be before you really have to start worrying, but it's getting kind of close for like $300 a pair speaper. So
I see.
I mean, I would lean more heavily towards the Ascends now than the Yamos. If you were said, I am 6 feet away from my, or 3 feet away from my computer monitor, then you go whatever was cheapest. It's not going to make any difference. But now you're 11 feet away in a reasonably sized room. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned last time, I think fairly highly of those Yamo speakers. For very inexpensive speakers, I think they're pretty good. I like their looks, but they do have that smiley face curve. There's no question about that. If you want something that is more blends in, because I mean, if he liked the looks of the HTM 200SEs, that means he wants matte black speakers that just disappear into the shadows, because that's what they are.
Right.
And so if you prefer that, I will wholeheartedly say the sound quality of the HTM 200SE speakers is better than the Yamo Studio Series speakers. I have, even not having listened to the Yamo series, I can say that very confidently because I know the HTM 200SEs really well, and they are a fantastic value because they get you to that. If you don't like the way they sound, then you don't like what you're playing. They tell it like it is, and they are there, and they've got wonderful high-frequency extension. I love the tweeter that they use in those, so I would feel really good about you going with those in your room size.
Yeah. He saw a good deal on some Klipsch reference series speakers at Costco. What do we think of those as an option? So the reference series, I know Klipsch has really kind of have just decided that they're going to buck all the trends here. I said buck, B-U-C-K, for any of you guys out there who are going to start complaining. That is an actual word that people say in the United States of America. They have decided that reference is entry level. Okay, so their reference series speakers are their entry level speakers. They're entry level speakers. I tend not to recommend them too highly. They aren't the best. They are cheap, and people buy them quite often because they're widely available.
And they can play loud. They can play loud with not a lot of watts, and sometimes that is a very beneficial thing.
I don't think you need that, so I would just stick with the HTMs or the Yamos, but probably the Ascend speaker.
Yeah, I will say in Klipsch's lineup, I like the Reference Premier quite a bit.
Yeah.
But the Reference is not the Reference Premier. The Reference is a whole separate series, a step down, and I'm not the hugest fan of them. I think they have their place. Like I just said, you need crazy loud output at a low price with not very many watts. They have their uses there, but I would not choose them. I probably wouldn't even choose them over the Yamos, to be honest.
Yeah. Is a 7-foot ceiling too low for in-ceiling Atmos speakers? What about wedge-shaped speakers mounted up high, such as SVS Prime Elevations? Somebody has not checked the price of those. Just going to throw that out there right now. Or the Klipsch Atmos speakers that we mentioned last time. 7 feet doesn't make a dang bit of difference. It just changes. It just changes how far in front or behind you are. It's all about angles, so it really doesn't make any difference. So if you can install in-ceiling speakers, that's what you should go for. If not, either the Klipsch ones or the SVS Prime, but they're more expensive than you think they are. There's also the ELAC.
Yeah, the ELACs would probably be a better option here.
Yeah,
and they would work pretty nicely as overhead speakers with the Ascends.
662s or something.
OAW4, isn't it, or something like that?
That's something like that. Yeah, that's the one I would go for.
Yeah, the ELACs, if you want to do the wedge-shaped ones. But as I mentioned before, if you're going to go Ascend, I think going with Sonances in-ceiling speakers, if you want to do in-ceilings for your Atmos speakers. Last week, they were $130 a pair, which is the cheapest I've ever seen the Mag 6 from Sonance over at Best Buy. This week, they've increased to $150 a pair, which is still lower than I usually see. Usually, I see them on sale for $200 a pair because their regular retail price of $600 a pair makes no sense, but they're on sale very frequently. But this is still a very nice low price. So honestly, if what you want is in-ceilings, I would snap those up in a heartbeat at $150 a pair, 2 pairs of the Mag 6s over at Best Buy, and then be sure to get the back cans. The back cans are $60 a pair, so we're at $210 per pair now. We're a little over $200. Last week when they were $130, we were under $200 a pair, but that's still under the $300 per pair, which is the price point that he was trying to hit, and those will work really nicely with these ends. If you want the wedge-shaped speakers instead, then yeah, the ELAC on walls are a good choice for that.
Okay. Last questions here from John. Last week we discussed John's complicated plans for large frameless acoustic panels with the idea to use neodymium magnets to hang them. All right, I already talked about you.
Yep.
To explain a little further, one side of his room has windows, and the idea was to cover those windows with the panels, hence the magnet idea, since he still wants to be able to get to those windows if needed. The window frame is about 6 foot by 6 foot, so that's where the panel size came from. The opposite wall is uneven, so 2 panels 3 feet wide each could go on that side. He loves what we suggest about only using 4 inches of insulation instead of 6 inches and having a 2-inch air gap. So he'll go with that. And if the panels are going to have frames now anyhow, he'll opt for making them freestanding to go in front of the windows. So that's the plan now. Sound good? Yes. Please. Thank you.
All of that sounds much more reasonable to me. And it's actually the amount of insulation he was intending to buy first anyway. So that didn't really change. But now it'll actually work. Now the math actually works out and you'll be able to do it.
We didn't save you any money, but we did because you weren't buying enough insulation.
And you're not buying the magnets anymore. Those things were not going to be cheap.
I mean, you could still hang them on the wall. I mean, you could still hang them on the wall. These things are so easy to get off a wall. I mean, they're just not that heavy. So does he need diffusion? I'm going to already say no. There you go. See, there you go. How would he figure out if he does, and if he does, where would diffusion panels need to be placed? Okay, so I am not a huge believer.
Long room that he's got where only half of it is the theater area. Behind the back half is like a kitchenette. So just keeping that in mind.
Right. So usually the most common place I see diffusion in people's home theaters when they created by themselves or by professionals is over the top of the seating area or the first reflection point on the ceiling.
On the ceiling. Okay.
Yeah. So if you were going to ask me where should I put diffusion in my home theater, I would say if you're not going to do one of those combo panels, which is perfectly fine that you don't, then I would say over the top at that first reflection point on the ceiling, or any place you weren't going to actually put a panel, basically.
Anywhere that was going to be a flat wall.
Yeah, can now
instead.
be diffusion if you want it to be diffusion. I just don't see a huge. I don't see as much of a benefit for diffusion because we are so lacking in absorption in our home theaters.
Right.
That diffusion is just like, well, okay, yeah. Technically, you made it. You scattered the sound so that it's not as localizable, but you didn't really reduce any of it, and that was the real problem I'm having. It's like, to me, I think that's the bigger issue.
Looking at the layout of what his room is going to be, I would strongly suspect that you will not end up needing diffusion in this space. I like your plan of having nice, thick panels at your reflection points. I think that is a very good idea. I think that will be audible and beneficial to you. The whole back of your room is going to be untreated, all right? The whole back half of your actual room, because the sound has no idea that you've only designated the front half of your room as the theater area. It has absolutely no idea the air does not stop moving at the imaginary line between your theater area and the kitchenette at the back. So all of that area back there and that whole kitchenette sound is bouncing around back there, more or less, like unrefined. It's not being absorbed or whatever. It's scattering off of whatever cabinets and fridge and everything is back there anyway. So I strongly suspect you will not actually benefit or need diffusion in this room. How would you tell? How would anybody tell whether or not they would actually benefit from diffusion? Well, you kind of have to have the room put together and then measure in it. There's not really any other way to tell other than I know I'm going to literally cover every surface of this room in 8-inch thick absorption, and then you probably know that you want to have some combo panels in that instance. But in a normal room, how would you know? Well, you kind of have to have the room first, have the absorption that you're going to have in that room first, and then measure. And when you measure, what you're looking at, even your like RT60 times don't really help you there, because RT60 plays like a blast of pink noise, or in the old days, you literally popped a balloon and measured that. And the idea was it's across all frequencies and you get this general idea of the decay times. But to really get an idea, you have to look at the waterfall graph. And what you're looking for there is that is showing your decay times. It's showing that the sound across the entire frequency range after you played a sweep instead of just a pulse, how much time it takes for all those frequencies to decay. They get quieter and quieter, and that looks like these mountains that are coming forward in your graph. Right. But when you look at the top line, the very top line, the top of the mountains, that's your frequency response. That's the same as if you just looked at the frequency response graph. So that's going to hopefully be fairly close to a flat line, or if you're putting in a house curve intentionally, the top is going to follow that. And you kind of want to see that shape maintained as the mountains come forward. That's the idea. The idea is that everything is getting quieter at a pretty equal rate. Now, always keep in mind, we expect the bass to have slower decay times than the treble, but we want to sort of see a gradual, smooth, even rise in those decay times. Or actually, if you're looking at the mountains coming forward, it'll be like down at the base, the mountains come forward a little bit more than way up at the treble, but it's like this very smooth, gradual line at the bottom of the mountains. We don't want to see lots of jagged edges. So if you see lots of jagged decay times in that waterfall graph in the mid-range and treble, that's where diffusion might be able to help you. And I will tell you straight up, in real rooms, it's rare. It's rare that that's what you end up seeing. It's not impossible. When you do see it, that's where diffusion will help you. And we've actually had a couple of instances. We've had a couple of instances of people with fully dedicated rooms, and they've showed us the graphs, and I'm like, oh, right there in 2 to 4 kilohertz, where diffusion is really effective, you've got actually like much too short decay times going on there. And that can happen in diffusion. Diffusion can help you in exactly that instance. It's not impossible, but I don't think that'll happen in your room, John. But that's how you would tell.
Okay. All right, who we got left?
We have Noah. And there's some photos, so I'm scrolling past them. Jay Martin from Ireland that Lee and I talked to last week, and Jack. Those are the people on the list for next week first up.
All right. I want to thank Sam for going to avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, as well as our 130 patrons over at patreon.com.
Yeah, Sam, thanks very much for the PayPal donation and patreon.com/AVRant podcast if you would like to sign up for an automatic monthly donation, and thanks to our 130 patrons over there.
Thank Ash for helping me out, as well as Jesper, Sam, Gurinder, John, Noah, Jack, and other Jack for sending us notes of gratitude. So thank you, Ash, and all the rest of you.
Yeah, Ash, thanks very much. I'll say thanks to Lee Overstreet as well once more for filling in last week on the extra episode.
It's not written down. I'm not
going
to say it.
That's right.
You're going to write it down. So.
And we have just murdered this fellow's name all episode long, so I think it's Jesper. Gosh, I'm going to have to go back and find that movie that he talked about so I can figure out how his name is properly pronounced. We apologize. Sam, Gurinder, John, Noah, Jack C, and Jack R, thank you all for the notes of gratitude for keeping the podcast going. A big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
If you want your question answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. For AVRant, I'm Tom Mandry.
And I'm Rob H. Now stay in and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.